For our forum today, the candidates will each answer a variety of questions that the candidates have already received. Like yesterday, we will have 2 rounds of yes/no questions. We will also have a question or 2 specifically for each candidate, and we will have a little bit more time today than we had yesterday, so we should be able to ask several audience questions. So audience, please don't waste your time in submitting those questions. I will be asking them throughout the forum, so don't be shy, and please don't wait till the end. I will be the only one to see the questions coming through on this iPad here. Hopefully it all goes according to plan. Candidates, we'll have a timekeeper at the front. I believe that's Rachel, right here, okay. For the lightning round of yes or no questions, we will ask you to use the paddles at your podiums. They are just one-sided. We learned this the hard way yesterday, so you might want to practice yes, no's, making sure that, yep, okay, you got it. You will have 2 minutes for your opening statement and 1 minute for your closing. For the remainder of the questions, you will have 45 seconds to respond. You will see a green sign when you still have 30 seconds remaining, a warning yellow sign at 15 seconds, and a big red sign when your time is up. With our abbreviated time today, please be courteous and stay within the boundaries. Audience, please do not clap during or after responses. That takes up a lot of time, and we will have an opportunity to thank the candidates at the end of the forum. So to begin, you'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Please include why you are running for the seat in your statement. I will draw a name out of this hat. Okay, good. And we will go in alphabetical order from after where the name is drawn. So the first up is Senator Murkowski, and then it will be Ms. Tshibaka and then Ms. Chesbro. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Katie, and good morning, all. Why am I running for office? I'm an Alaskan. I'm 3rd generation. This is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where Vern and I have chosen to raise our kids. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere, and I care deeply about it. I understand Alaska. I understand the promise of statehood. I understand that it's resources that make us the great state that we are, whether it's our fisheries, whether it's our timber, whether it's our minerals, our oil, our gas. And so what I've been doing in the United States Senate is working to deliver on those promises of what that means to be a resource-rich state, working to lift the 40-year-old ban on oil exports, working to fill up our Trans-Alaska pipeline that has been with us for some 45 years. Everything that I did to write and advance the legislation on ANWR to finally open the 1002 area to leasing after a 40-year battle. What I have been doing to push every single day to make sure that on the NPRA, that Willow and other projects are able to advance. But this doesn't come by accident. Just because we have the resources doesn't mean it comes by accident. It comes from working to push, working to pull, working with others to deliver. And that's what I have been doing for you, for Alaskans. It's about delivery, it's about results, and it's about relationships. We can talk all we want, we can complain all we want, but we gotta figure out how we make it happen for the state that we love. And that's why I'm running for office.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Ms. Tshibaka.
My parents were once homeless in Alaska. Then my mom got a job up at the slope, and it was that resource industry job that changed everything for our family's story. They were able to fight their way into the working class, and they gave birth to me, and I was raised in Wasilla in Anchorage. And I got to be the first in our family to pursue a college degree, starting at UAA, and then working for Senator Ted Stevens, and he encouraged me to go to law school. It was a little bit of a rough experience, but the best part was getting to marry my wonderful husband, Nikki, the son of an African immigrant who's with us today. And together we have 5 wonderful children, and one of them's with us today too. Thank you guys for being here. And after that, I got to start a career in government. I spent about 2 decades fighting to make government work for the people instead of against us. I did that making agencies work better in Washington, D.C., and then coming home and making them work better for us in Alaska. I believe that this race is about the future of Alaska. Alaska is our nation's best resource, if we're allowed to tap into it and unleash our resource industry. We wrote the book for responsible resource development. But instead of helping Joe Biden by confirming nearly all his radical nominees who've declared war on our energy industry, killed our jobs, and driven up inflation, I'm committed to doing what's best for Alaska. We need to protect our jobs, oppose those trying to shut down our resource industries, and stand with our families and our workers. I got into this race because I owe everything to this great state, and I want to fight for the people who fought for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for sharing the stage with people who obviously love Alaska as much as I do. I wasn't born here. My husband and I drove here in 1974 for 1 year. Well, it's been a long year, and it's been a great year for us, and we have benefited greatly by the industries that you all represent. I have natural gas coming into my home, so that heats my home. I drive a gasoline-powered car. I have enjoyed the promise of this land. I'm also an educator, and I was an educator in Alaska for over 40 years. And educators, by their very nature, are future-oriented. We invest our time and our energy in those young people and their potential to give back to the world those wonderful characteristics. I was just talking to one of my former students earlier today, and there's another one in the room perhaps. So that's kind of an exciting thing, but I am future-oriented, and I think as we move forward, we need to make sure that we make this world a better place for the people coming behind us. I have a great-grandchild, I can't believe it, being born in this month in Minnesota. I think we have to make our world safe for those children. I think we have to be careful that we are weaning ourselves from our fossil fuels because we know that it's a problem. I was just listening to the news on the way in. Pakistan, part of Pakistan that's the size of Colorado is underwater. Climate change is real, and we need to address it. And I'm looking to the future to work with all of you to make sure that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro. We will now move on to questions that were submitted in advance, and we will start in alphabetical order. So, Ms. Chesbro, you will be first. So the theme of the conference today is Alaska, America's key to energy independence. Are current policies in D.C. a deadbolt or a master key?
I think, I am not a black or white person. I think we can work together to do both of those things. I don't think we should have deadbolts. I don't think we should have master keys. I think we should work together to make sure that whatever we do benefits the people around us.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Well, unfortunately, unfortunately, I think we do have a deadbolt with this administration. It has been tough. I think those of you in this room, those of you that are focused on oil and gas and our resource production, know that this is an administration that has taken a very aggressive view against our development. But the fact of the matter is there was no magic change in legal authorities between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And so what we've got to do is we have got to be pushing back in terms of how we stand up for Alaska, but we also need to be speaking with voices where they will listen to us. And so it's these discussions where you can be civil, you can be firm and hard, but you've got to be able to have that discussion and have that conversation to make that difference. That comes with relationships, and that's what we've got to build. Whether we like the administration or not, that's going to be the key, is the relationships that we can build.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka, deadbolt or master key?
Senator Sullivan said it best on the Senate floor when talking about how this infrastructure bill was a bait and switch. He said the Biden administration regulations are clearly meant to kill all infrastructure, especially for oil and gas. That's a deadbolt. The federal agencies are filled with radical nominees confirmed by a vote from an Alaska senator, and they're not abiding by federal law for permit rules or area plans and lease sales. BLM has kept millions of acres locked up under PLOs that were supposed to be resolved right after Anilka. And Congress can hold these agencies accountable through budget cuts in the Appropriations Committee or a series of hearings like before the Energy Committee. And I think it's about time that we start doing that.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next question. So Senator Murkowski, you will answer first here. Alaska already has a worker shortage and will only get worse with the federal infrastructure projects, the PICA project, and hopefully the Willow project. How do you plan to address the worker shortage in Congress?
Well, the worker shortage is real regardless of the industry that you are in, and we are feeling that with the surge that we are seeing already in support of projects for the infrastructure. With the infrastructure bill that we have advanced, it's going to be even more exacerbated. What we have, we've got good partners with the state. We've got programs that we can work to advance through the University of Alaska, through Sept. We have the Pipeline Training Center that are all keen assets. But I think we need to recognize that there is even more that we can do beyond the facilities. With one of the congressionally directed spendings that we just advanced, a program that would help to facilitate more CDLs, the commercial driver's license. So it's going to be all aspect. It's going to be those people who are working up on the slope and all those who are here in the state supporting them.
Thank you. Ms. Chibaka.
Washington, D.C. needs to start incentivizing people to work rather than not to work. It would also be great for the federal government to start giving those grants and low-interest loans that they provide for colleges over to our vocational and technical programs. We should get rid of the federal law that was passed that is now increasing the hurdles for our CDLs so that we don't see this contribution to our trucker and bus driver shortages. We can also help the federal government have a reduction in regulations on our daycares. It's contributing to our daycare shortage, which takes parents out of the workforce. I'd also like to look at reducing taxes and regulations on businesses. In Alaska, we would love to see more businesses develop social infrastructure, like those fun things that families can do on the weekends, maybe get a Trader Joe's or more department stores up here.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to audience questions, and we already have a ton coming through, which is great to see.
Am I going to get to answer that one?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Ms. Chesbro, my apologies.
Sorry. Of course, I'm an educator, and so I believe that we need to educate people to be able to do the jobs that we want them to do, these well-paying jobs, these jobs that we have in Alaska. And I was a high school principal, so I know that we have vocational technical programs in high schools, but we can't keep up with the industry. So it's really important for us to have partnerships with the industry to help young people, especially in Alaska. Our young people, some of them feel very discouraged with life in general, and we need to bring them in. And I think partnerships with unions, I think working together to make sure high schools provide the foundational skills and then go on and go to technical skills. Technical schools or technical programs can help to address that and help to address our young people's needs as well.
Thank you. Now we're going to audience questions. The Inflation Reduction Act just passed out of Congress, but many believe it will do nothing to actually address inflation. What meaningful steps will you take to provide relief to Alaskans and Americans suffering through skyrocketing inflation? Ms. Chibaka, we'll begin with you.
So I believe that Congress is responsible through a posture of appeasement and accommodation to Joe Biden for all this inflation. When you spend at these rates, inflation naturally follows. So to solve this, we stop runaway federal spending. We advocate for nominees and policies that are going to support domestic energy supply and independence, lower taxes, reduce regulations around our businesses. I think it would be great if we look at having Alaska play a pivotal role in elevating our national economy by maybe looking at mining for gold again on federal lands to back our currency with gold. I think we can forge a stronger partnership for economic stability here in Alaska between tribes, Native corporations, the state and the federal government. That's possible now that we have that tribal partnership going on at the state level. These are all ways we can turn the economy around.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
Inflation is a problem. It's been a problem before, and it will be a problem again. Fortunately, it seems to have stabilized. There are many causes of inflation, and I think the federal government, through Jerome Powell and his group are trying to address it. And it'll take the rest of us, too, to not feel like we have to buy everything that's in sight. You know, that's one of the things. Demand does drive inflation as well. But we need to help those people that need help in these times that they can't afford their food. And I think I think we need to figure out ways to have social safety nets that will help people.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Well, we're seeing it. We're living it. 9.1% inflation, highest in 40 years. I guess it's gone down just a little bit below 9, but that's nothing to celebrate. It is real, and it is impacting Alaskans at all levels. So what do we do about it? Well, the thing that we don't do about it, you don't do increased spending, you don't increase your taxes, and in my view, you don't add 87,000 additional IRS employees. So this is a measure that, in my view, does not reduce inflation. This is supply and demand, folks. So let's work on the supply side. That's something that we can control in this country and in this state where we have the supply. We can be doing more in Alaska when it comes to our energy production, when it comes to our mineral production. We can address the supply side, but we need policies that work to support us in doing so.
Thank you, Senator. We are going to move to our first round of yes, no, so get those paddles ready. And this is around my not so favorite theme of ballot measures. So let's just start with ballot measure 2 in 2006. Did you support or would you have supported ballot measure 2, which was the gas reserves tax? Yes or no? In 2012, did you support or would you have supported ballot measure 2, which was the coastal management plan? In 2014, did you support or would you have supported ballot measure 1, which was the referendum to repeal SB 21? In 2018, did you support or would you have supported ballot measure 1, which was the salmon habitat initiative? In 2020, did you support or would you have supported ballot measure 1, which was the initiative to raise oil taxes? Thank you. Can put those paddles down. Moving on to the next question that's been submitted to all candidates. Permitting is one of the largest federal issues facing Alaska. Name 1 to 2 specific reforms you would champion in Congress. And Ms. Chesbro, we'll begin with you.
Any permitting should be, obviously, need to be moved along as rapidly as we can. That takes staff, that takes technical expertise, and that takes the right tools to move it. So those two things, more staff, better process.
Okay, succinct, I like it. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you. We're all focused on permitting reforms. I have been working aggressively in the Senate to address this through not only changes within the infrastructure bill that has just passed, but also with the passage of my American Mineral Security Act. There's a lot more changes that need to be done. I think clearly focusing on timelines. One suggestion might be for judicial review of a decision that's made under NEPA. If a judge finds that there's any problem with an analysis here for a project, I think that they should actually have to find that it would have made a material difference in the decision in order for the challenge to be successful. I think we're seeing that play out right now with Willow, where it just seems that there's a lot of ticky-tacky
Senator, your time is
that
up.
are holding things back.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
Senator Sullivan recently initiated a resolution because the permit process changes in the infrastructure bill didn't work. Agencies that don't comply with the law should face budgetary consequences, and I think they should have seen these budgetary consequences through the Appropriations Committee by now. We could codify in statutes permanent deadlines without exemptions. The reforms that were proposed by the CEQ before Biden repealed them could also go in statute. I think there should be no double jeopardy for all of our companies that go through the arduous process of federal permitting and then get a final record of decision. I think that should be final. That's a good faith thing. We shouldn't be a government that permits by politics, but by process, and government shouldn't be introducing significant risk into our business decisions.
Thank you. The next question is, the Alaska Center supports 100% clean energy by 2050, which would essentially shut down the industry in less than 30 years. Do you support this policy? Why or why not? Senator Murkowski.
So you may recall that when California made this announcement about this requirement, it was less than a week later that they issued a heat warning and said everybody needs to go through conservation measures, and one of those steps was do not charge your electric vehicle. How ironic is this? This makes, in my view, no sense. So we shouldn't be forcing people to buy an EV vehicle if you don't want to. We shouldn't be forcing people to buy a vehicle that they can't afford, which is for most of us in this country just exactly that. We need to have policies that make sense. We need to work with the technologies to advance them, but you can't push it in a way that is unreasonable. And I think that's what we're seeing out of California.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka.
I don't support it. Yesterday we saw a presentation by Benji Johnson that showed us the demand for both clean energy, renewable energy, and oil and gas is just going to increase tremendously. I think we all agree on wanting clean air and clean water, but John Kerry himself has said even if we get down to net zero carbon emissions, it's not going to change any impact on carbon emissions globally. Instead of pushing these big government climate policy changes, we should, define what waters of the United States means under the CWA. We could also prohibit preemptive and retroactive vetoes under the CWA, reduce taxes and regulatory barriers so we can invite and invest in energy innovation and environmental conservation efforts like what we have in the Impact Mitigation Grant Program. I think that those are going to be more successful efforts long term. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Tshibaka. Ms. Chesbro.
I don't think it's realistic to think that we will be totally fossil fuel free anytime. I think we need a lot of forms of energy. I think renewables are really important. I think they're especially important in rural Alaska, where sometimes I sat next to a person on the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago he flies freight. He had to fly diesel into a village because they couldn't get their barge in with the diesel. That's hugely expensive. We need to look at other ways, and renewables are one of those ways, and we have a great state to make a stand on renewables. I think we need to rely on oil and gas as well, however.
Thank you. Okay, another audience question coming through. With multiple levels of local, state, and federal jurisdiction in Alaska, how would you interact with and promote cooperation between state and federal agencies across different administrations to increase development in Alaska? Ms. Tshibaka.
I'm very fortunate to have had the experience as a Department of Administration Commissioner and also having had experience working with federal agencies for 16 years. It's about 2 decades of experience in state and local government. I think that the interagency play between state and local, it is really subject to tenuous breakdown, and communication is really important. One of the things that we found is the communication between our federal delegation and the governor's office and commissioners is really important to getting things done. Understanding what the needs are and what those hurdles are is really critical, and that's a high priority for me. Commissioner relationships, governor relationships, and the federal delegation going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
And I certainly agree. I think talking with each other, building relationships among each other, listening to each other are vital pieces of any work that we do. It certainly was as a teacher. It certainly was when I was working with parents. It certainly was when I was working with principals. It certainly was when I was working with superintendents. We need to work with each other, and we need to listen to each other. Nobody knows everything, and unless we agree that we are civil with each other and that we will let each other speak and explain their needs, we'll never get anywhere. So I think it's vital that we do that, and I would be doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro. Senator Murkowski.
I think when we talk about the interaction between state and federal, we need to remember that it's not just these agencies, that it is going to be so key to be working with the local governments as well as others. For instance, up on the North Slope, the Arctic, the Eskimo Whaling Commission has been key to good communication, the ability to advance opportunities within that region. So it forces us to think more broadly beyond the restrictions and the confines of just traditional agency individuals. If we want communication that's going to work, We've got to be civil, we've got to have relationships, they have to be bipartisan, but they have to be really very comprehensive.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, another audience question. This is a fun one. What's the most interesting or surprising news story that you've read in the last week that caught your attention or provided an alternate viewpoint that you had not yet considered? This could be in any category: politics, lifestyle, football, economy, foreign affairs. Ms. Chesbro.
Well, I'd have to say that maybe it was more scary than anything is reading the article about Greenland warming so fast that the ice melt from Greenland will raise the sea level by 10 inches within years. That to me was baffling and scary, and I keep thinking about that and trying to think about how can we address those kinds of issues in our world.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
I just want to say, Pat, that's such a substantive response, because I was thinking about the giant pumpkin that made the record at the fair.
That's
I
a
still
good
have
one.
that picture in my mind. Okay, in fairness, that's what I thought. But I was also very, very, very pleased to see the announcement from the administration announcing that they will move forward with an Arctic ambassador. This is something that I've been working on for about a decade now, and so that was a really good news announcement on top of the giant pumpkin.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Chibaka.
Mary Peltola is our next congressman. I think that everybody in the room is thinking about that right now.
Very good. Okay, it's time for another lightning round, so get out the paddles. Would you seek a Jones Act waiver for Alaska? Do you support federal agencies preemptively vetoing a project before it is allowed to go through the regulatory process? Did you or would you have supported the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act? Did you or would you have supported the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act? Thank you. Moving on to the next set of questions submitted in advance. What do you see as Alaska's role in carbon sequestration or carbon capture? And Senator Murkowski, we will begin with you.
Well, I think that this is such an exciting area. Carbon sequestration, carbon capture, it needs to be all of the above. For those of us that were listening to the Assistant Secretary Crabtree talking about the extraordinary potential for us here in Alaska, on the North Slope, our gas is already captured. We re-inject for enhanced oil recovery in the interior where we have these basalt formations. This is a great source for us to be able to trap this carbon. Cook Inlet and the potential there for carbon sequestration. So what we've been doing with the federal assistance side to allow Alaska to go after these opportunities for these carbon hubs, our hydrogen hubs, working with the tax credits that have now been put into place.
Time is up, Senator
We've got
Murkowski.
opportunities.
Thank you. Ms. Chibaka.
Alaska can totally lead in carbon capture use and sequestration. We're already involved in carbon dioxide enhanced oil recovery, and we've owned the pore space. That's not like most other jurisdictions. We have more deep coal seams, saline basins, and pore space than any place else in the United States. So this can be used by our operators to enhance oil production and reduce our carbon emissions, possibly become a major future revenue stream. We know that Asia is already talking to Alaska companies and projects about this, and the state's actively working to develop the legal and regulatory framework for it. I think that this could become a huge industry in Alaska, and it's got exciting potential.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I think our role is the leader. I think we have been ahead. I think we can be ahead. And I think with the help of the aforementioned help from the federal government, we can continue to be ahead. And I'm proud of Alaska.
Very good. Thank you. So we have a few candidate-specific questions, and you'll each have 1 minute to respond. Senator Murkowski, we'll begin with you. Senator, do you regret your vote for Secretary Deb Haaland as Secretary of the Interior?
So there's been a lot of discussion about the Secretary of the Interior and whether or not I was the deciding vote. Folks, the fact of the matter is is Deb Haaland had the votes to be confirmed. She would have moved out of the Energy Committee on a tie vote. She had 54 votes in the Senate, and so she was moving forward. So the question is not whether or not I was the deciding vote. The question is what kind of a relationship do you want to have with the Secretary of Interior, who is effectively our landlord, for purposes of trying to be able to advance, finally, after so many years, a small connector road to King Cove. We got to be able to talk to the Secretary. Like it or not, it's her department that has the oversight of what we're going to do with Willow. You got to have the ability to speak to somebody there in the department. I think this is exactly what Congressman Young was thinking when he introduced her in the Energy Committee. I think this is exactly what Senator Sullivan was thinking when he also voted.
Thank you, Senator.
To move her.
Ms. Tshibaka, in keeping with the theme of the Secretary of the Interior, you have been extremely critical of Senator Murkowski over her vote for Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. At the same time, you've been silent on the late Congressman Young's endorsement of her and Senator Sullivan, who also voted to confirm her. Do you think they deserve the same criticism that has been launched towards Senator Murkowski?
Yes, because I don't think that this vote was in the interest of Alaska. We know that Deb Haaland has not only not approved the King Cove Road and made no commitments to, she shut down the future of NPRA, she's killed the Cook Inlet oil and gas leases, she's shut down the Ambler mine, she's pulled back on all of our navigable water rights that we've won before the U.S. Supreme Court twice. She's just showed that she cannot be trusted. And I know that Senator Sullivan has said, you know what, that was not a good vote for Alaska. You can have good relationships with the Department of Interior. There's a whole lot of federal employees there that work there, and you can also say, you know what, it's our job to fight like hell when you got a nominee before you who you know is going to hurt Alaska. We should have gotten something else out of that deal, and our delegation could have done something better. So I think that's our job, is when we're up there to not play on Team Biden, but to be a good goalie. And Senator Murkowski mentioned that at the beginning. We got to push back on the Biden administration. We should have been doing that from the beginning. We still have 2 more years to go. There's a lot more nominees coming, and when you handpick the deputy for Deb Haaland, and you also handpick in a tie-breaking vote for the council, we've got a problem in the whole Department of Interior now.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro, in a candidate Q&A with the Alaska Beacon, you wrote that, quote, Alaska needs a fiscal plan with a view towards the future with shrinking oil revenues. Can you expand on that statement? Do you see the oil and gas industry as a dying industry in Alaska?
I do not see the oil and gas industry as a dying organization. I think we really, as I said earlier, we rely on oil and gas. We will. We need to build up the other kinds of energies in Alaska as well.
Thank you. Okay, going to audience questions. Dave Karp was right yesterday when he made fun of everyone's grammar, by the way, but I'm going to do my best here. Okay, I'm paraphrasing a little bit as well. So name a quality that you admire about each of your opponents. And it says in all caps, please be authentic in your response. So Ms. Tshibaka, let's start with you.
What I'll say about Senator Murkowski is she's very good at developing friends. This past year and a half has been difficult in taking people through an emotional change management process to try and get them to move away from a friend and think of her as an employee and not as a friend. So she's very good at developing friends. Pat Chesbro is very principled and consistent in what she believes, and it is very hard to find a principled politician. So I like that about both of them.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I have admired Senator Murkowski for years. I know she's done a lot for this state, and she's worked hard for this state. As Ms. Tshibaka, I don't know her as well, but I really always admire people that will step forward and put their views out there and run for office. I think that is an admirable trait, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Well, to Ms. Tshibaka, I think that it is admirable because I know how tough it is to run a campaign, full-time operation, and have a family at home. And it's challenging because you're on the road, your time is not your own, and you're so torn because of your commitment to your family. So I admire what you are doing as a candidate, and I admire your family for the support that they have provided you. To Ms. Chesbro, I just support our teachers. And the fact that you have been not only a teacher, but an administrator, and working with Alaska's kids for your tenure, I have great respect and admiration for that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to another audience question. What current U.S. Senator do you respect the most and why? Ms. Chesbro. You can't answer yourself, by the way, Senator Murkowski. Not that you were thinking of doing that, but.
I do respect Elizabeth Warren very much. I think she did a lot for consumer protection. And I think she says a lot of things that are very true, and I do appreciate her.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski.
Because I know so many of them, I respect them all in so many different ways. I respect the relationships that I've been able to build with my colleagues on the Energy Committee on both sides of the aisle. Senator Manchin on the other side and Senator Barrasso on the Republican side, very, very keenly focused on America's energy issues and really principled as they're working to represent their states at a time when it is challenging for a resource state like West Virginia or Wyoming. So we've got good kinship, good bonds there, but I admire them both as individuals and human beings as well.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
I'm going to go with Mike Lee, and this is why. When I'm in D.C. in this watchdog role, holding government insiders accountable, I see a lot of people in D.C. on both sides of the aisle. Senator Murkowski is right. You can't judge someone in D.C. by their party. People do flashy balance beam routines, but most of them don't stick to the landing. That's why a lot of stuff doesn't get done. I really don't care about the balance beam routines. I just want people who stick the landing. So you might not know the people. A lot of them kind of skate under the surface, or you don't really see them. But the people who get things done are the people who get my respect.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to a question that was submitted in advance to all the candidates. There's an anti-Arctic movement in boardrooms around the world. What will you do, if elected, to fight against this and to improve the investment climate for Alaskan projects? First up is Senator Murkowski.
This, of course, is big throughout the industry, but it's not just unique to us in Alaska. There's a focus on the Arctic, but I think we need to recognize that this is a bigger push than just out of Wall Street. It is global. And so what we are doing to tell Alaska's story in a way that is meaningful and real is an imperative to all of us. It's not just those of us in the Congress. It's all of you in the industry to demonstrate the best practices, to demonstrate the balance that we see. Yes, we're accessing a resource that the world needs, but we're doing it in an environmentally conscious way. We're doing it in a manner that is respectful of the indigenous peoples who live there. We have the story to tell.
Time is up. Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka.
I once asked Senator Stevens how he got so much money for our state, and he said, "I take them fishing." And then after they caught a king on the Kenai, he'd put him in a Cessna and fly him out to a rural village where they'd see how Alaskans really live. And then if they didn't vote for his projects, he'd take them fishing again. And he told me, when you get your budget, use it strategically. I think right now we need to use our Senate office budget strategically to better communicate how Alaska is the gold standard for oil and gas development. We have the opportunity to communicate to the lower 48 and turn them into our advocates, because American energy security is good for families, workers, national security, the environment, and vulnerable Americans. That's what I do.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move back to a couple of individual questions, and we will start, Ms. Chesbro, with you this time. President Biden ran on a platform of ending oil and gas leasing in federal areas, and many of your potential Democratic colleagues in the U.S. Senate support other anti-oil policies. What will you do to convince members of your own party to abandon those positions?
Abandoned, we have, my understanding is there are many leases that have been let that have not been used at this point, and I would suggest that maybe we should use the ones that are out there to start with, and then go from there if we need more.
Senator Murkowski, this question is for you. You, along with Senator Sullivan and the late Congressman Young, voted for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, known as IJA. IJA has been touted to potentially bring in billions of dollars to Alaska and includes some unique energy provisions. However, your opponent, Ms. Tshibaka, has been critical of this vote and recently said in an Anchorage Daily News candidate survey that due to the mountains of regulation and federal bureaucracy woven within the law, Alaska won't get a single new road or bridge from the funding, but that it will help advance Green New Deal type provisions. Do you share these concerns? And if so, why did you sit at the negotiation table when crafting the bill?
I not only sat at the negotiation table, I helped write the infrastructure bill, and that's exactly why. That's exactly why to this point already we have over $2 billion that are coming to Alaska, and it's not just for roads and rails, it's for bridges, it's for ports, it's for harbors, it's for water, it's for wastewater, it's for broadband. Go talk to the people in the communities that I've been in, whether it's Metlakatla and Ketchikan yesterday or Kotzebue and Kodiak last week, about the benefits that they are seeing on the ground right now with water infrastructure, with broadband that is coming our way. Yes, it's coming fast, and yeah, we've got to make sure that we are competitive with our grants. We're dealing with some matching issues, but the reality is this is unprecedented in its opportunity. Talk to the people in Southeast about the Alaska Marine Highway System. They're finally going to see a ferry again.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka, you are closely aligned with the Republican Party and have been extremely critical of the Democratic leadership. If elected, and if the Republicans do not gain control of the Senate, how will you get Alaska priorities through the Senate?
Having worked under all administrations and most of the time under the Obama administration, I have a lot of experience working with the other side. I got through legislation to pass the Inspector General for the intelligence community. It took 5 years and worked with a lot of Democrats. The key is finding values that you share in common. Like right now, I think we've all shared a vulnerability towards supply chain limitations and dependence on foreign adversaries. I think we can build a coalition around that. Another one that we need is our millions of acres of land back that we were promised as statehood. We share that in common with a lot of Western states, which happen to be run by Democrat senators. I think that we can pursue building an alliance around those Western states and get a transfer of public lands back from the federal government. There's a lot of things we share in common with the other side. It's just a matter of building those alliances and pushing through the results that we need.
Thank you, Ms. Tshibaka. The state of California is likely mandating no more new gasoline-powered cars be sold in their state after 2035. What is your view on this policy? Ms. Tshibaka, we'll begin with you.
California's ban is short-sighted. It's going to harm their state's economy and probably disrupt our national supply chain. Remember, they're suffering from brownouts and blackouts across the state, and it's pretty clear that their grid cannot contain this kind of a surge. I think the burden of the big government policy is ultimately going to fall on the backs of the families and the businesses in California. I don't think that we're going to see Congress take this up because ultimately it'll fail. But I also don't believe that as a society we advance through bans. I think we advance through competition, and that'll be the path forward for the energy future.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I think it's short-sighted, actually, to have a policy like this in California or anywhere else, as a matter of fact, because I think we have to develop the grid much more than it is developed, and I think much more than it will be developed even in 13 years to be able to support electric vehicles. Obviously, in Alaska, we'd have a really difficult time. Despite the relay that we had that demonstrated we could do it, we still had to take our power to those things. So I think it's maybe a stretch from California to try this at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro. Senator Murkowski.
Yeah, I hit on this before. I absolutely think it's the wrong policy. When California's policies become America's policies, I think we're like Europe right now on energy. We know that that's not going really well for them right now. Another point that needs to be reinforced here, though, is the critical minerals issue. Our reality is if we're going to move forward with the EVs that are going to be required, The vast amounts of critical minerals are an imperative for us. Right now, this administration is not looking to this country to access those minerals. They're looking outside. That has got to change. You can't go from a position of dependence on minerals that makes us more vulnerable
Thank you,
in an
Senator.
effort to pursue a policy that I think is short-sighted.
Thank you. Okay, we have another audience question, which is, do you support the PRO Act? Ms. Chesbro.
I support the PRO Act. I support unions, and I support union workers, and workers of all kinds, actually.
Senator Murkowski.
Well, I absolutely support unions and the many benefits that they bring to their members and the work that is done here within the state. But I have shared the concerns that I have about the PRO Act as it has been written, as it has moved through the House. And so that is something that I would say at this point in time I can't support the PRO Act.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
People should have a right to join a union or a right to not join a union, and the PRO Act would take that away. But regarding the infrastructure bill, 25% of the infrastructure bill was for actual infrastructure. Alaska's going to get, according to what Senator Murkowski said, less than 1% of that. And people across the state I've talked to can't find that money or apply for it. And we have less infrastructure per capita than any other state in the nation. So it's like the government's handing us $100 and we're having to fight like hell over 50 cents. So I think what we really need to do is get a grant writer on the Senate staff. That's what I want to do to help Alaskans get access to money. In the meantime, that's the exact bill that's caused record high inflation so that people in our state can't pay for both gas and groceries this week. We got a raw deal out of that, and we should have done a lot better. All it did was push through Biden's climate change agenda.
Okay, another audience question. What is the strategy you plan to put in place to eliminate the politicizing in the environmental impact study and permitting process that creates delays? Senator Murkowski, we'll begin with you.
Say that again, Kate.
What is the strategy you plan to put in place to eliminate the politicizing in the environmental impact study and permitting process that creates delays?
Our reality is that the NEPA process is being used to stop, delay, to eliminate projects. And so as we think to the efforts that can be made to push back on that, to roll back on that, we had a congressional resolution of disapproval that was led by Senator Sullivan just a few weeks ago that passed on a bipartisan basis. I don't think that this administration is going to respect that, but again, this is an area where we recognize that our environmental laws, our environmental rules cannot be used to halt, to kill these projects that are so important to our resource and our resource opportunities.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
So I come from the federal government oversight world. And I think that we could really leverage that. I think I'm probably the only senator who understands how to do that as extensively as I do. We could do a systemic review of all the decisions these leaders across the agencies are making to exempt their agencies from that 2-year requirement. Unless we make that 2-year requirement firm, then the agencies need to be held accountable by Congress. We also can put in what I call a pure permitting requirement, predictable, understandable, reliable, and equitable, so that our companies can have dependable permitting. When NEPA was passed, none of these federal environmental statutes existed. Maybe we should go back and look at NEPA and repeal it. Is it even necessary anymore? Or if we can't do that, at least we should do what we talked about yesterday, put in a requirement that if there's a NEPA review, there's no judicial action against it. It's not necessary.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I worry about the politicization of so many things, so many aspects of our lives, so many claims that everything is political. I would have to investigate further this one because I haven't studied it that much, but I don't think any of our processes should be politicized, and I would fight to make sure that they aren't.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. What are your thoughts on making sure that communities in close proximity to Willow and Alpine will have a safe and clean air environment? Ms. Tshibaka.
I believe that that's what our extensive permitting process is for. And I really trust, especially when we were talking about it yesterday, all the steps that you have to go through at the federal level and at the state level to make sure that Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act and everything in DEC is checked. That's how we make sure that everything's taken care of. I also believe that all the voices at the table need to be considered, and I believe that we're moving more and more in that direction. That's how we make sure communities are listened to.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I think we need to both, as we said, listen to what everyone says and their concerns, but I also think should anything be approved, we need to make sure we monitor to make sure things are safe for the communities that surround the area.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
It's about communication with those who are in these communities, communication not only by the companies that are operating up there, our federal agencies, our state agencies, but I think it's also important to give that certainty to the local people through the monitoring that is already going on the ground, but be open with them, transparent about the data so that they have support in that data as well. They need to have credibility in that. The consultation needs to be real. It needs to be meaningful. It needs to be on the ground. It can't be Washington, D.C. coming in and saying you got 30 days for a public comment. It is being in these communities, and the communication goes back and forth.
Thank you. So this question kind of relates to the last one, which is, have you been to the rural communities that are impacted the most from development near NPRA and ANWR? If so, which rural communities? Ms. Chesbro.
I've been to some rural communities, but I do not believe that they're the ones that have been impacted by ANWR.
Okay. Senator Murkowski.
I'm trying to think. I've been to Adkasuk. I've been to Kaktovik. That's in 1002. I have been to Nuiqsut. I've, of course, been up to Barrow, Utqiagvik, and Wainwright. I think those are the ones that in the NPRA 1002 area.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
I've been to Utqiagvik a couple times and was weather prohibited from being able to catch planes to other places. Winter's a hard time to travel.
Very good. Okay, so this is a question for everyone submitted by the audience. Would you support legislation that imposes term limits on all members of Congress? Senator Murkowski.
Wow, you know, there are times when I say, yes, we should all have term limits. But then I recognize that a small delegation like Alaska, where there are 3 of us, and we've been one man down now for a period of time, when there's 3, it really does make a difference to have the opportunity to build that seniority. And we have seen that seniority and how it has benefited Alaska. From Senator Stevens in his tenure, Congressman Young, 49 years. I have been there and have built up seniority, tenure relationships that are delivering results to Alaska every day, and that matters.
Ms. Tshibaka.
I support term limits. If you have a term limit system in place, then the whole system changes and it wouldn't be based on seniority. And I don't know that it matters when your seniority is being used to help Joe Biden.
Ms. Chesbro.
I am for term limits. I don't know what those terms would be, and I understand the seniority aspect. I understand the many of the arguments for no term limits, but I do believe that after a while, maybe it's time to, we all become enculturated to the organizations of which we are a part. And sometimes it's good to have a different view. So I am for term limits of indeterminate number, I don't know.
Thank you. This is a similar question from the audience. Would you support legislation that withholds the salaries of all members of Congress until a balanced budget is passed and the deficit spending ends? Where did I leave off? Ms. Chesbro, I believe you're first.
Okay. Say it again.
Do you support withholding salaries of members of Congress until a balanced budget is passed?
I do not. I do not believe in punishing people for things that are a group of people's responsibility. No, I would not do that.
Senator Murkowski.
I say do your job. Pass the budgets. We recognize that our process is not perfect, but our reality is that if you were due as is being suggested, which which is purely punitive, I'm not convinced that you're going to get the product that Americans are hoping for. So there are ways to encourage the job getting done, and that's what we need to do.
Ms. Tshibaka.
I think that withholding means no money, right?
Yes, I believe that's the intent of the question.
So I think that maybe then they wouldn't come to work. So maybe freezing, there might be other ways to incentivize this, but I think the point is we haven't, I think it's like the last 12 years, when I worked on appropriations, Senator Stevens made us get out the budget no later than August 30th. I think in the last 12 years, we haven't had an appropriations bill passed completely on time except for once. We just had another CR extend us. We have somebody on the Appropriations Committee. I agree, do your job. That's in Article 1 of the Constitution, and instead the government just keeps spending our money, which is when we talked about inflation, we both said you got to stop spending so recklessly. That's why we've had over $24 trillion added to our debt in the time Senator Murkowski's been in office.
Thank you. Another audience question. It's no secret that DC has become more and more polarized over the years. So does seniority really matter anymore? Senator Murkowski.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does, because what it allows you to do is to establish these working relationships with people that you might not necessarily like, you might not necessarily agree with, but you gotta get the job done. You gotta figure out how you're gonna make it happen for your state. And so it's about your position on the committee. When you are brand new coming in, it's not like you can say, hey, I want to be chairman of the Energy Committee, or even be on the Energy Committee. It doesn't work that way. So it's your positions on committees, it's the relationships that you have built, and then it's what you have done with it. It's not just the years that matter, it's what you have done with it. And that's what Alaskans are looking for. They're looking for the value of that investment, and that's what I've been able to deliver for Alaska.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka.
Seniority could be used to block appropriations, to make agencies hold their feet to the fire, you know, for like holding to permit rules and area plans and lease sales. We haven't done that. It could be used to block nominees or oppose nominees to trade things for Alaska. It could be used to like keep ANWR open after we got ANWR. It could be used to get along with both administrations instead of one administration when you didn't send you to DC to pick a vendetta with a president. It can be used for relationships on all sides in order to get things done for Alaska, not get things done for DC insiders. And I think that that's one of the things. Seniority doesn't help when you squander it. It doesn't help when you say that tie-breaking vote wouldn't have mattered anyway. If your votes don't matter, then they don't matter, and seniority doesn't help with that.
Ms. Chesbro.
Well, obviously, seniority was always intended to have opportunities for people to have learned on the job and be well-versed in all the issues, which are very complex in the Senate and in the government. So obviously, that's important. I don't think it should just be how many years have you lived, though, that you should become the most senior member, and I'm not suggesting that that's what's happened here. But I think that we also need to look at how we bring people into these organizations. I think any organization that has longstanding people, it's really important that we invite and we include so that others can learn as well. So I think there's a real responsibility to being a senior member of any organization.
Thank you. Another audience question is, what can Alaska do right now to help the European energy crisis? Ms. Tshibaka.
Again, I think we're all in agreement. We've got to do everything we can to push forward projects, even if incrementally, in permitting and oil and gas development, getting back to any kind of energy independence that we can do so that we're the ones who put Putin in charge of the energy and gas mountain. When we let him develop Nord Stream 2, when we let them, through the vote for Deb Haaland, through shutting down oil and gas development here, we let them become so strong globally, and we can help reverse those policies by doing what we can to set up oil and gas and energy independence here in Alaska. It's going to take some strong work. I would like to see if we can open up the personnel files of all those people who worked on the ANWR project and see if they were ever held accountable for that terrible EIS review they did, because I don't think they ever were. And that would show Deb Haaland's lying. Ms. Chesbro.
It's my understanding that we are the world's leading producer of crude oil, so that's important. We are we are more of an exporter than an importer, according to the information that I have. It's really important, I think, to try to help them in any way they can. I'm not sure we can put crude oil on ships and send it over, but I think we need to help them in any ways we can to help their economies level out as we look toward a very cold winter, perhaps.
Senator Murkowski?
I've suggested that what needs to happen is we need to be more aggressive with the oil and gas that we have available and help expedite it to Europe as quick as we possibly can. We have export terminals in the Gulf that can do more. We have more that we can do here. I have pushed to update our loan guarantee for the Alaska gas line, a project that we know is going to take longer. But think about it, folks. If we don't send the signal that we're going to do more domestically, it doesn't help Europe. It doesn't help. It helps Russia, because Russia then is the one that says we can outlive because we've got the resources here. This administration needs to send the signal that we're serious in this country about producing our own resources for our benefit and that of our friends and allies.
Thank you, Senator. How do you plan to work with the newly elected Representative Peltola, including on resource issues? Ms. Chesbro.
I would work with Ms. Peltola as much as I would work with anybody else who was just elected. And I like her, and I like the fact that she was elected, so that's even better.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Well, I too am celebrating the fact that Mary Peltola is going to be our Congresswoman. I've worked with her in the House. She has an extraordinary work ethic. She knows and loves Alaska. She is expert in the fisheries resources issue. She knows our issues. So I will work with her as a partner. I know that there's some processes in Washington that are going to be a little bit overwhelming, and I'm there to help her every step of the way, whether it is helping to facilitate staff or just navigating. But she has a wealth of information and Alaska knowledge that she brings to the table already, and I think she will make Alaskans proud in Washington.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka.
I appreciate that Mary Peltola is open to resource development. And I think we can partner together on trying to get more investments back in Alaska. I think she would be a really good messaging partner for that. She talked about that yesterday. Right now, they're driving investments away from projects because they're out of favor at the Biden administration, and that's kind of typical social engineering. But I think that we've got to make the message that this is going to help vulnerable Americans, and I think she could help make that message really strongly. We got to get back to those basic capitalist fundamentals that a good project with good metrics and good governance deserves good funding. And we want to make sure that ESG is no longer politically weaponized by the Biden administration and his radical nominees in order to help Alaska, and that's all of Alaska. Mary will be a great partner in that.
Thank you. Later this afternoon, there will be a panel on energy options for Alaska. What is one of Alaska's top energy prospects besides our traditional oil business? Senator Murkowski.
We've got so many. Obviously, critical minerals. This is an area that we should be leading more on. I think there is a real advantage for us there. We heard the Deputy Secretary talk about methane hydrates. This is something that I have been focused on for a long period of time. It went back decades working with the Japanese, where we were helping to facilitate through appropriations a partnering between Alaska and Japan on research for methane hydrates. So there's a lot of excitement there. More we can be doing with heavy oil and our unconventional resources. I do think, though, that so much of this comes back to the permitting issues that we still have in front of us that hold us back from much of our opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Tshibaka.
I believe we're at the tip of the spear for developing renewable and clean energy, hydro, wind, geothermal, solar, biomass. And supporting renewables also means supporting mining. We can't develop the one without the other. Minerals are critical to renewable technology, and this now is obviously critical to all things national security. I think we need to take an all-of-the-above energy solution. We don't have to choose between a clean environment, economic growth, individual freedom, and federalism. We just need to drive down energy costs and help everybody. So let's get out of picking favorites and just take it all. Federal energy policy should treat everybody equally and take the government out of picking favorites.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro.
I really want to focus on helping these small communities in Alaska be in energy independent as well. My daughter-in-law and my son just added solar to their homestead on Alexander Creek. They have cut their usage of diesel by half by just doing that one thing. I think we could be a laboratory for renewable energy in Alaska, and I don't think we've taken enough opportunity to do that. I think it's exciting that people have power at all, but I think we need to look at individual areas to see, would thermal work, would tidal work, what would work in those areas, and have microgrids around the state that we can use in this world as a demonstration.
Thank you. Ms. Tshibaka, we have an audience question specific to you. What would you do differently than Senator Murkowski has on the Willow Project, and how would that bring it closer to fruition than it is today? How would you work with the Biden administration and be more effective than the senator has been thus far?
The Willow Project's open discussions just closed, so we'll see what they change. If nothing, then everything's great. But if something changes and we have to start back at ground zero, then I think we need to realize that the Biden administration and the nominees, we can't trust. They haven't fully greenlit a project for us, and we need to start using some other methods. So I would call for hearings, so assuming I'm in the same positions, I'd start using the Energy Committee to call for hearings. And then I'd go to the IG and do a review. We have this EPA case that came out that says that the administration is overreaching in their authorities, and I think that the IG could lob onto that and start saying, you know what, maybe there's an abuse of authority here, and especially a pattern and practice of discrimination against Alaska. I'm seeing it, I bet they would too. This is the field I come from. I think we could get a win.
Thank you. It's a question for everybody. What is the best way to monetize our natural gas resources? And Ms. Tshibaka, I think we're back with you.
We have a lot of natural gas resources. We just need to build the infrastructure to transport it. So I think that there's a couple options we've all been looking at. The one is the pipeline, and it looks like that's getting some new life with some recent investments. So we'll see how that goes. We've all been saying, hey, it doesn't look like it's particularly profitable, and too bad we don't have that built now, right? Because now it would be really profitable. It's obviously a national security investment for us, and I think it will be long-term. Having spent more than a decade in the national security community, it will be long-term. But the other option is to just ship it off the North Shore. And we have people who are looking into that too by renting icebreakers, and we can do that as well. I think we can do both and both would be obvious energy solutions for us in the natural gas arena.
Thank you, Ms. Tshibaka. Ms. Chesbro.
I agree with the idea of the pipeline. I think that not only does that help our national security, it helps our people in Alaska. We have the natural gas. For me, in my house, it's been a boon. I think it's important to expand that and to use it for our people so that they can use that as part of their energy supply. So,
Thank you, Senator Murkowski.
This has been a quest that we've been working on for decades, and Alaskans have kind of come and gone with different projects, and I think this is part of the reason that we're still talking about this window for our natural gas and what that's going to mean. The reality is the resource is there, the market is out there. We have recognized it's not a domestic U.S. market so much. It's our friends and allies in Asia. And so how we get it there, this is our challenge, Alaska. I've tried to help facilitate this gas line through, again, updating our loan guarantee. We first put it in place in 2004. We've re-upped it within the infrastructure bill to actually make it real there. But whether it's over the top or a gas line, we have got to recognize we got to get behind one project and make it happen.
Thank you, Senator. Okay. Who is one person you would like to see run for president in 2024? Ms. Chesbro.
well, I'm not running.
Okay. So we've eliminated one person.
So that eliminates me, so I don't know who else.
I'm not running. That makes two of us.
All right. Senator Murkowski.
I'm not running.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Tshibaka.
If this is how we're answering the question, then I'm also not running.
Okay. Let's move on. Apparently, no one is running for president that's on the stage. I am also not running, in case anyone is wondering. Let's see. Okay, where is one place in Alaska that you haven't been that's always been on your bucket list? Senator Murkowski.
I'll start because I'm going there next week, weather providing. Tenakee is a small community outside of Juneau. We have been working on some legislation that would have some impact on that community. I made a commitment that I was going to get out there to Tenakee Springs. It's not big, folks. It's about 80 people year-round. But these are policies that are going to impact Alaskans. They deserve to be heard and to be heard directly. And so I'm going to be in Tenakee in about 10 days or so.
All right, weather
permitting.
Yeah, pray to the weather gods.
Southeast in September.
Okay, very good. Ms. Chibaka.
I would love to get out.
Oops.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would love to get out to Dutch Harbor. We were headed out that way during our Aleutians trip, but I ran into an Arctic typhoon, which I didn't know existed. So we had gone over to King Cove, had to fly back into Cold Bay, and they had told me, if you're spending the night, you're spending a week. And they were right. And so, yeah, I had to walk at a 45-degree angle for a couple days, and then we weren't able to do anything else on the Aleutians. But it would really be great to get back out there.
Ms. Chesbro.
There's so many places I haven't been. I think I would like to go to Kotzebue. I've never been to Kotzebue. I've heard a lot about it. I know it's a wonderful place, and I'd like to visit there.
Thank you. Okay, what are 3 adjectives that your colleagues would use to describe you? Ms. Chibaka.
Oh, wait, I have to think. So colleagues, I think, so fun, family-oriented, and trustworthy.
Ms. Chesbro.
I've asked this question before, and they have said such things as thoughtful, passionate, and innovative.
Senator Murkowski.
Tenacious, thoughtful, and I think civil.
Great. Okay, for all 3 of you, what can you do to ensure that companies who operate in Alaska are hiring Alaskans? Ms. Chesbro.
First of all, we need to make sure Alaskans are ready to be hired by those companies. And I think that that's really the responsibility of all of our educational organizations and all of us to make sure that we hire Alaskans to do those jobs. So that's really important. And we need to make sure that Alaskans are prepared. So.
Senator Murkowski.
Yeah, it's absolutely, we need to make sure that Alaskans are ready to be hired. The jobs are there. I think Santos deserves a shout out. You know, the pickup project is going to be about 98% Alaskan hire, which is super grateful. The reality is we don't have a lot of tools to force the companies to do local hire, but moral suasion is also important. I, on a relatively frequent basis, will send a letter to all the companies that are operating in Alaska saying, I want to see what your local hire is because it's important to me, it's important to Alaskans, and it should be important to you as an operator in our state. Some of our companies have done better than others, and we just keep reminding them of their responsibility to hire local.
Ms. Chibaka.
I've talked to a lot of companies who want to hire local and they can't. I think we really need to focus on building the next pipeline in Alaska, which is a jobs pipeline for our youth to be trained in Alaska industry jobs so they can stay here and we're not exporting them to grow up on social media in the lower 48. So that's really pursuing that vocational and technical education here in Alaska. And go back to that comment I made earlier about social infrastructure. Right now we have been losing in the loss of families outside the state. We need to be recruiting people up to want to live here, and that means building out fun things for families to do and then training them here. I think offering tax credits to companies that can fill their payroll right now, helping businesses out by just lowering the cost of doing business, and if there's a way to do that by incentivizing Alaska Hire, that's one way to do it.
Thank you. What is the most important leadership lesson you've learned? Senator Murkowski.
Never, ever, ever give up. Right now, where we are with Willow is a little reminiscent of where we were with the CD5 project when we were trying to get that bridge. It was years, it was millions of dollars, and it was an administration, the Obama administration at the time, there was a lot of pushback. And despite the hesitancy and the feet dragging, we were able to get folks up there. It was Secretary Salazar at the time seeing it. We pushed, we didn't give up, and we prevailed. That's exactly where we're going with Willow. We are staying in there. We're reminding them every single day we're not dropping this bone, and we're going to get Willow through on time so that Conoco can begin with their winter exploration season.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Chibaka.
Authentically champion others. It's about them and it's not about you. When we did our launch video, I hired this best Super Bowl winning team who's done a lot of videos for people who are in Congress now. And they said, we've never met anybody like you. You're not like other politicians. So I'm not a politician. And they said, well, usually we have to get up here a day in advance so we can help the person figure out why they run. I said, they hire you and they don't know why they run? No, they know why they're running. It's to climb a career ladder. But we can't put that on video because people won't vote for them. But you knew exactly why you're running, and you did the whole video in a day, and you just told us the same thing over and over again, which is the same thing I'm telling you guys now. They said never lose that because nobody else is like that. And if you keep that, you'll keep the right heart and the right spirit when you're in D.C. Authentically champion others, and I've been doing that my whole career.
Thank you. Ms. Chesbro.
I learned a long time ago that leaders need to trust first and then assume that everybody has the best intentions and that they're working for the best of everything. And I know that that isn't always true, but I'm going to trust first because I think when you trust people, they know. That certainly worked with teenagers, and it certainly worked when I was with teachers. So I think you need to trust first, and that's what I always do as a leader.
Okay, we're going to have our final question before we let the candidates offer their closing statement. What do you see as the greatest opportunity for the future of the industry, and what do you see as the greatest challenge? Ms. Chibaka.
Our biggest immediate opportunity is with Willow and Pica, obviously, but I think after that, having spent more than a decade in the national security community, we have an incredible opportunity to leverage our ability to provide energy and mineral security to strengthen national security. Everybody's looking at that right now. Our biggest challenge is the discrimination that we're facing in Arctic project funding. I think that we can alleviate that by setting up a communication shop like I talked about in the Senate office to message that differently and address factors that increase delays like implementing predictable taxes, dependable year-round infrastructure, and predictable, understandable, reliable, and equitable permitting. That's what I'm going to fight for.
Thank you, Ms. Chibaka. Ms. Chesbro.
Our biggest opportunity, I think, is pivoting from becoming just oil and gas companies to becoming energy companies. To be thinking about the various needs of energies, not just in our state, but around the world. To be thinking about how important it is to make sure that we are responsible in our usage and our development. And I know I've heard very often today that we are. But let's look at all those other ways, and let's be energy companies, not just oil and gas companies.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro. Senator Murkowski.
I think our greatest opportunity still lies with the resources that we have. We have extraordinary potential, and it is all throughout our state. But what we have with our oil and gas resources, our mineral resources, it is boundless, and it's only limited by the challenge, and the challenge is access. It's not only geography, it's the cost that we recognize, but it's access to capital, it's access to investment. So it really comes down to accessing the opportunity that remains our greatest challenge.
Thank you, Senator. We are at the end of the questions. Now candidates can give their closing statements. You have 1 minute, and I will pick from the hat. Ms. Chibaka.
Okay. Alaskans are trying to decide between paying for gas and groceries. We've been punished in permitting and locked out of lands and resources by radical nominees confirmed by our senior senator. Senator Sullivan recently put it like this: who do you stand with? Do you stand with the American people, the workers, and the families who are suffering? Or do you stand with Joe Biden and his radical environmentalist allies and the special interests supporting him? That's the decision before Alaska. Do we want a senator who stands with Alaska, or do we want the senator who's been standing with Joe Biden? Our senator needs to be willing to take some heat in DC in order to do what's best for Alaska. We can power America with our energy and create America with our minerals, build America with our lumber, feed America with our fish, protect America with our national security, but we have to have leadership that won't be bullied and controlled by the DC insiders. It's time for a change.
Thank you, Ms. Tshibaka. Ms. Chesbro.
As I said earlier, I'm about the future. I'm about ensuring that no matter what we do, we think about those children and grandchildren that are out there that are going to inherit this world from us. And we need to make the best decisions we possibly can, and we need to make those in our own homes, and we need to make those in the halls of the legislature, and we need to make those with our friends and our neighbors. I really appreciate all the work that you do. I would like you to continue doing that work, and I would like you to enhance that work as we look toward the future of not only Alaska, but our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chesbro. Senator Murkowski, closing statement.
Thank you. I think folks recognize that there's a lot at stake for Alaska in this election, certainly for our oil and gas industry. You know how important you are to our state, and I'm proud of the work that I have been able to do for you, with you, on your behalf as we've worked to advance these priorities. I'm not going to stop fighting for you. We've got so much opportunity here. TAPS is not just a pipeline. TAPS is our economic lifeline. It really is. And look, Prudhow's still with us. Prudhow's still going strong. The opportunities that we have with Willow and PICA to create greater jobs for Alaskans. We've got good companies working with us. But there's only one. There's only one of us up here on the stage that has a track record of delivering for you, with you, on the things that we care about as Alaskans. Only one has the capability and the credibility to deliver more. Folks, seniority matters, and so do bipartisan relationships. I've got both, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Please join me in thanking our candidates and being willing to step up to serve.